When you think of 1980s family sitcoms, your mind probably goes to shows like The Cosby Show, Family Ties, or Growing Pains. They were the comfort food of television, serving up an idealized version of family life where every problem was neatly solved with a hug and a gentle laugh track. They were safe, wholesome, and advertisers absolutely loved them. But on April 5th, 1987, the new kid on the block, a brash network named Fox, threw a Molotov cocktail into the pristine living rooms of suburban America. That cocktail was *married ... with children *, created by Michael G. Moy and Ron Levitt, who'd ironically cut their teeth on the much more traditional hit The Jeffersons. This new show wasn't meant to comfort. It was meant to confront. Its working title said it all. Not the Cosbys. The show was loud, rude, and completely unapologetic. It revolved around the Bundy family, a hilarious, grotesque parody of the American dream. You had Al, the defeated shoe salesman forever haunted by his high school football glory. Peggy, his lazy, bonbon-addicted wife. Kelly, their beautiful but hopelessly dim-witted daughter. And Bud, their perpetually horny and frustrated son. They didn't love each other in the way TV families were supposed to. They tolerated each other, trading insults like currency in a household powered by glorious dysfunction. And to the shock of many, America couldn't get enough. The show became a renegade hit for Fox, a blast of cynical, blue-collar realism in a sea of sanitized fantasy, but *married ... with children was always walking a tightrope. Its comedy was built on pushing boundaries and saying the quiet parts out loud. It was a magnet for criticism from day one, with family values groups and politicians decrying it as trash. The show wore that criticism like a badge of honor. But there's a line in television, an invisible boundary of what's acceptable. And in 1989, the show's creators didn't just cross it, they blew it to pieces. They produced an episode so scandalous for its time that the very network built on being edgy got cold feet and refused to air it. In 1989, an episode of *married ... with children was filmed, edited, and all set to go. But its jokes were considered so racy, its premise so outrageous, that Fox executives panicked, pulling it from the schedule and effectively locking it in a vault. It became known as the Lost Episode. This is the story of I'll See You in Court, the secret motel recording that created a television legend. To get why this one episode caused such an explosion, you have to understand the vibe of the late 1980s. The Reagan years were winding down, but the conservative cultural movement was in full swing, and television was a key battleground. The big three networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, stuck to a pretty strict unwritten code. Their bread and butter were family sitcoms that showed a world of upper-middle-class comfort, where parents were wise and kids were good, dash-hearted. Then came Fox. Launched in 1986, the network was a massive gamble. Unable to compete with the big three on their own terms, Fox went for a guerrilla strategy, targeting a younger, hipper, and more urban audience that the other networks often ignored. Their philosophy was simple: be edgy, be provocative, be different. *married ... with children was the tip of that spear, the network's first breakout primetime sitcom. From its very first episode, the show was a cultural hand grenade. The Bundy home wasn't a cozy haven, it was a beige prison of despair. Al Bundy, played with magnificent misery by Ed O'Neill, wasn't a wise patriarch. He was a man broken by life, whose only joys were reliving his 4-touchdown high school football game, and the rare moments of peace he found on the toilet. His signature move, stuffing his hand down his pants, was a crude comfort against a world that gave him nothing but a dead-end job and a family that treated him like dirt. Katie Saigel's Peggy Bundy was a revolution for TV moms. She wasn't nurturing, she was a domestic parasite. With her towering red beehive and painted-on pants, she proudly refused to cook, clean, or work, preferring to lounge on the couch, watch Oprah, and drain Al's meager paycheck. Their kids weren't much better. Christina Applegate's Kelly took the dumb blonde stereotype to its hilarious extreme. While David Faustino's Bud was a pint-sized schemer whose attempts at being a ladies' man always ended in failure, and you can't forget the neighbors, Marcy and Steve Rhodes. Marcy, played by Amanda Burse, was a prim, feminist banker who was Al's mortal enemy. Her husband Steve, played by David Garrison, was a yuppie constantly and reluctantly dragged into Al's terrible schemes. This wasn't just a sitcom. It was a savage satire of the American family and the crushing reality of diminished expectations. And for millions of viewers, it was a breath of fresh, if slightly foul, air. People wrote in saying, "My family is just like that." The show's writers had tapped into a deep vein of working-class frustration that was totally absent from TV. The theme song, Frank Sinatra's Love and Marriage, was pure irony and anthem for a union that looked more like a 17-year prison sentence. The show put Fox on the map, but its success made it a target. The humor was relentlessly lowbrow and sex-obsessed. Jokes about Peggy's non-existent libido, Al's frequent trips to a strip club called the Nudie Bar, Kelly's promiscuity, and Bud's frustration were the show's bread and butter. For 3 seasons, they danced on the edge of acceptable taste. And then they created I'll See You in Court, an episode that didn't just dance on the edge, but gleefully swan-dived over it. The episode, filmed in early 1989, kicks off with a classic Bundy problem. Al and Peggy's romantic life is basically dead on arrival. On Marcy's advice, Peggy decides to reignite the flame by taking Al on a romantic getaway to a sleazy, no-tell motel called the Hop-On Inn. The premise alone was pushing it for 1989 primetime. A sitcom setting a whole scene in a seedy motel? Daring, but the writers were just getting warmed up. In their dingy room, Al and Peggy discover the motel has an in-house adult video channel. As they're flipping through, they see a familiar pair of faces on the screen, their neighbors, Steve and Marcy. It turns out the motel has been secretly videotaping its guests. And this is where the Bundys' reaction is priceless. They watch, completely transfixed as their uptight, yuppie neighbors engage in what seems to be hours of athletic lovemaking. The shock quickly turns to outrage when they realize that if the Rhodes were recorded, they must have been recorded too. The two couples team up to sue the motel owner for a massive settlement. This all leads to the episode's climax, a courtroom scene where the illicit tapes are played as evidence. And this is where the episode went from racy to red alert for the network. The scene was designed for maximum humiliation, mostly at Al's expense. When the Rhodes tape is played, it's a marathon of passion. But when the jury is shown the Bundy tape, it's comically, insultingly brief. The central joke, the one that reportedly sent network executives into a panic, was that Al and Peggy's encounter was so short. The tape had to be played over and over in slow motion just for the jury to confirm anything happened at all. The script was packed with the show's signature sexual humor, but this time the entire plot was built around a sex tape. The dialogue, the gags, the very idea of putting the main character's sexual failings on public display, it was a combination that Fox, despite its edgy reputation, just couldn't stomach. According to creator Michael Moy, a typical script might get 2 or 3 notes from the censors. I'll See You in Court got 15. The producers fought back, but Fox wouldn't budge. This was a step too far. The decision to pull the episode didn't happen in a vacuum. By early 1989, married with children, was already at the center of a national firestorm, thanks to one woman, Terry Ricalta. Terry Ricalta was a homemaker from the wealthy Detroit suburb of Bloomfield Hills. She wasn't some longtime activist. She claimed she saw the show for the first time on January 15, 1989, while watching TV with her kids. The episode she saw wasn't the lost one, but Her Cups Runneth Over, a story about Al's quest to find a specific bra for Peggy. Ricalta was horrified. The episode had an elderly man trying on lingerie, a character groping a mannequin in S&M gear, and plenty of what she saw as sexual innuendo. Outraged that this was airing at a time when kids could be watching, she decided to act, but Ricalta was incredibly well-connected and organized. Instead of just writing to the network, she launched a massive letter-writing campaign targeting the show's advertisers directly. She wrote to the CEOs of dozens of companies, accusing them of sponsoring softcore pornography. Her campaign became a media sensation. The New York Times ran front-page stories about her crusade. She went on national news shows like Nightline. Suddenly, a housewife from Michigan was the face of a national movement to clean up TV, and at first it worked. Terrified of controversy, major brands like Gillette and Kimberly-Clark pulled their ads. In a major twist of irony, Coca-Cola, whose own subsidiary produced the show, announced it was personally embarrassed and would be reviewing its sponsorship. This was the supercharged atmosphere Fox executives were in when they screened "I'll See You in Court." They were already bleeding advertisers and facing a PR nightmare. The network was still young and vulnerable. A full-blown boycott could have been a death blow. The timing couldn't have been worse. Just as the Ricolta story was peaking, this new episode about motel sex tapes landed on their desks. It was like pouring gasoline on a fire. Faced with the script, the network panicked. They demanded huge edits that the producers felt would gut the episode. When Moy and Levitt refused, Fox made the call that would create a legend. They shelved it. They pulled it from the schedule with no explanation and locked it away. A casualty of the culture wars. The network's decision to censor its own hit show angered the cast and creators. They saw it as an act of cowardice, a surrender to a vocal minority that just didn't get the joke. Michael Moy said he was bewildered by the overreaction, insisting the episode was fundamentally silly, but then a funny thing happened, the controversy. That was supposed to kill the show became the best thing that ever happened to it. Terry Ricolta's campaign had a massive, unintended consequence, a perfect example of what we now call the Streisand effect. People who had never even heard of * married ... with children * were suddenly curious. What was this show that had people so outraged? Viewers tuned in by the millions to see what all the fuss was about. The ratings, already solid for Fox, skyrocketed. The controversy didn't drive viewers away. It created a whole new audience. In a beautiful, ironic twist, the cast and crew were so grateful for the free publicity that they reportedly sent Terry Ricolta a bouquet of flowers every year as a thank you. As Katie Sagal said, she tried to get us off the air, and all it did was get us on the front of the New York Times, and it doubled our audience. The advertisers who had fled eventually came crawling back. Fox made one small change, moving the show's time slot to the slightly later 9 p.m. slot. But the content itself stayed just as raunchy, if not more so. The show was a bigger hit than ever and would run for 11 seasons, becoming a television institution. For many years, it held the title of Fox's longest-running live-action sitcom, a record later broken by It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but I'll See You in Court remained in the vault. For years, it was a piece of TV lore. The legendary lost episode that was too hot for American TV. It did air in other countries, which only added to its mystique. Fans whispered about what could possibly have been so shocking. It became a holy grail, a testament to the show's legacy. While it eventually popped up in some syndication packages and on DVD for 13 years, the episode remained officially unaired in a primetime slot in the U.S. finally. On June 18, 2002, more than 5 years after the show's finale, the lost episode was unearthed and given its premiere on the cable channel FX. When I'll See You in Court finally aired in 2002, the reaction wasn't shock. It was mostly confusion. Viewers who had heard the legends for over a decade were stunned by how tame it all seemed. The motel setting, the jokes about the sex tape, it all felt almost quaint compared to what was on TV by then. Shows like Sex and the City on HBO were exploring sexuality with a frankness that made the Bundys look like the Brady Bunch. Creator Michael Moy found the whole thing hilarious. He said audiences were shocked at how innocent the episode was, and that, to him, was as funny as the episode itself. The great, scandalous band episode was a victim of its time. The controversy was a snapshot of a specific cultural moment, a flashpoint in the battle over censorship that now feels like a relic, looking back. The story of I'll See You in Court is a fascinating look at how cultural norms change. The themes It touched on secret recordings, invasion of privacy are arguably more relevant today in the age of the internet than they were in 1989. The idea of being secretly filmed is no longer just a wacky sitcom plot. It's a real modern anxiety, yet the episode itself feels almost wholesome in its absurdity. Compared to the cynical humor of shows like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia or the animated chaos of Family Guy, the Bundy Roads Motel Adventure is remarkably lighthearted. The very things that panicked Fox executives in 1989 have become standard tools in the modern TV comedy playbook. The show, once called the crudest comedy on primetime, now looks like a trailblazer. Asterisk Married, with Children Asterisk and the controversy it courted, helped kick the door open for a new generation of comedies that were darker, more honest, and more willing to reflect the messy realities of life. The lost episode wasn't just a collection of dirty jokes. It was a symbol. It was a line drawn in the sand between the old guard of television and the new. The journey of I'll See You in Court, from a censored pariah to a celebrated piece of TV. History is the ultimate asterisk married ... with children asterisk story. The show was a sledgehammer to the delicate sensibilities of 80s television, and this episode was its most powerful swing. It was pulled from the air out of fear of advertisers, fear of backlash, and fear of being too far ahead of its time, but history vindicated the rebels. The outrage that was meant to crush the show instead fueled its success, proving that a huge audience was starving for comedy that was raw and unafraid. When the episode finally aired, it wasn't a bombshell. It was a time capsule. It was a reminder of a bygone era of moral panic and a benchmark for just how much the world had changed. The lost episode finally found its place, not as a scandal, but as a celebrated chapter in the story of a show that dared to tell the truth about love, marriage, and the glorious unending misery of the American family. But what do you think? Did Fox overreact by pulling the episode, or was the backlash justified for the time? Would an episode like I'll See You in Court even cause a ripple today? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this look back at TV history, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about the shows we love.